Diddy! Diddy! There's only 5 individuals, man! Can you sign them?
Diddy could be a free man next month because they have filed a massive document.
He really wanted out on time served, and if, worst case, he wanted to spend, say, another month in jail. So that's not going to happen.
Did y'all hear this story about Diddy could be home as early as this summer?
Just when it seemed like the story couldn't take another twist, a new development has reignited the conversation around Sean Diddy Combs. After months behind bars and intense public scrutiny, reports now suggest he has been approved to earn time credits under the federal First Step Act, a reform program designed to reward inmates for rehabilitation, education, and consistent good behavior. If those credits continue to accumulate, his projected timeline could shift significantly. The First Step Act, signed into law in 2018, allows eligible federal inmates to reduce their time in custody by participating in approved programs such as anger management, vocational training, counseling, and educational courses. For every 30 days of successful participation, inmates can earn 10 to 15 days of credit. Over time, those credits can add up, sometimes leading to earlier transfers to supervised release programs or halfway houses. According to reports circulating in media outlets, Combs has been compliant inside the facility, participating in programs and avoiding disciplinary issues. While his official release date remains listed as May 2028, earned credits and time served could potentially move that date forward if all eligibility requirements are met. However, it's important to note that final release decisions depend on the Bureau of Prisons and federal review processes, and no official early release date has been publicly confirmed. Combs was sentenced to 50 months in federal prison after being convicted on transportation-related charges. He was acquitted of more serious allegations, including racketeering and trafficking counts. His legal team has consistently argued that the sentence was excessive compared to similar federal cases, while prosecutors maintain that the punishment reflected the broader impact of his actions.
Diddy just got sentenced to 50 months in prison, right? Just over 4 years. And this, of course, after last year, even though he was acquitted of the most serious charges that he was facing, like sex trafficking and racketeering, he was convicted of transportation to engage in prostitution. So he had his legal team asking for him to be sentenced to just 14 months, which included the year he's already been in jail, which would make it just over time served, and he'd be out by the end of the year.
Inside prison, reports have described the adjustment as dramatic for the former music executive who once ran Bad Boy Records and built a global brand spanning music, fashion, and spirits. There were also claims made in court filings about safety concerns during his incarceration, though specific details have not been officially verified by federal authorities. Now, the possibility of transition into a supervised work release program has fueled debate. Work release does not mean full freedom. It typically involves monitored housing and strict conditions, while allowing limited outside employment or programming. Still, it marks a significant step toward reintegration. Outside prison walls, challenges remain. Business relationships have shifted. Brand partnerships have dissolved. Financial pressures reportedly mounted due to legal fees and settlements. Even if his sentence is reduced, the reputational and legal aftermath continues. The First Step Act was designed to apply equally to qualifying inmates regardless of status. Supporters argue that participation and compliance should be rewarded across the board. Critics question whether high-profile defendants benefit from greater legal resources and visibility. For now, the paperwork still reflects a 2028 release date. Any change would require formal confirmation from federal authorities. What is clear is that Combs' legal and public narrative is still evolving. If an early transition does occur, the next chapter will likely unfold under intense public scrutiny. Whether that means a quiet reintegration, a strategic rebrand, or continued legal battles remains to be seen. One thing is certain: when it comes to Sean Combs, every development sparks conversation. And this one is no exception. What once looked like a long, locked-in sentence is now surrounded by new questions, and even more speculation, about the future of Sean Diddy Combs.
Yesterday, Diddy woke up to a knife against his neck in prison. Inmate nearly slit his throat. Diddy reportedly nearly got his throat slit in prison. The 55-year-old music mogul, who was sentenced to more than 4 years in prison. Only 4 years.
While his official projected release date remains May 2028, the reported approval under the First Step Act has changed the tone of the conversation. The law allows eligible inmates to earn time credits through participation in structured rehabilitation programs, and sources claim Combs has been actively working toward maximizing those credits. If that continues, a transition to supervised release, or a halfway house before his full term ends becomes a real possibility, though nothing has been formally confirmed by the Bureau of Prisons. What makes this development so striking is the speed of the narrative shift. Not long ago, headlines focused on the dramatic fall of a mogul who once dominated music, fashion, and culture. His conviction on transportation-related charges, despite acquittals on more severe counts, led to a 50-month sentence that many viewed as a decisive turning point in his legacy. His legal team argued the punishment exceeded norms for similar cases. Prosecutors maintained it reflected the seriousness of the circumstances. Now, instead of debating how long he will remain behind bars, the conversation has shifted to how soon he could re-enter society, and what version of him will return. Work release, if granted, wouldn't mean unrestricted freedom. It typically involves strict monitoring, structured housing, employment limitations, and compliance requirements. But symbolically, it would mark the beginning of reintegration, a move from confinement toward controlled independence. The outside world he may return to is vastly different from the one he left. Several civil lawsuits remain active. Former business partnerships have reportedly dissolved or paused. Brand value has shifted dramatically. The entertainment industry moves quickly, and public perception can harden just as fast. Supporters argue that rehabilitation is the purpose of the First Step Act, and that anyone who qualifies should benefit, celebrity or not. Critics counter that access to Haig,
if the jurors are guilty on sex trafficking and prostitution, I don't think the government is going to come back, bring the victims back, spend 2 months retrying this case just to get racketeering. Sex trafficking in particular with force has a 15-year mandatory minimum sentence and a potential life sentence. So Combs is going to go away for quite some time. If, on the other hand, the jurors are just guilty of prostitution, the Mann Act, interstate travel to engage in prostitution, not guilty on sex trafficking, and hung on racketeering, I don't think the government is going to retry the case.
There is also the personal dimension. Incarceration often forces reassessment. For someone who once built an empire around ambition and image, the experience of losing control over time, movement, and autonomy can be transformative or destabilizing. Which direction the story takes depends not only on earned credits, but on decisions made after release. Will he attempt a full public rebrand? Will he stay quiet and rebuild privately? Will ongoing legal battles overshadow any attempt at redemption? For now, all timelines remain conditional. Approval for earning credits is not the same as immediate release. Federal review, compliance, and administrative processes still determine final outcomes. But one thing is undeniable. The possibility of early transition has reopened a conversation many assumed was closed. Whether this becomes a redemption chapter or another controversy depends less on the clock and more on what happens once the doors actually open. The deeper this story unfolds, the more complex it becomes. For years, Sean "Diddy" Combs represented ambition at its loudest. Chart-topping hits, billion-dollar branding, and a larger-than-life persona built on control and confidence. His rise from Harlem to the top tiers of entertainment business was framed as a blueprint for mogul success. Then came the conviction on federal transportation-related charges, the 50-month sentence, and a dramatic shift from boardrooms to prison walls. Now, the reported First Step Act approval has injected uncertainty into what once seemed like a fixed timeline. Under the law, federal inmates who qualify and consistently participate in approved programming can earn time credits toward earlier placement in supervised settings. But approval to earn credits does not automatically equal immediate freedom. The Bureau of Prisons still determines eligibility, compliance, and final transfer decisions. Good behavior must be sustained. Program requirements must be met. Any disciplinary issues could slow.
So, Team Diddy, aka Media Takeout, said exclusive. Sean Diddy Combs approved for First Step Act. Could be home by this summer. I said, wait, but don't panic, y'all, for all that want Mohawk Diddy ass behind bars. This is just a tactic for Diddy to put this story out so people who hounding him about money and lawyers who are not getting paid and all his employees that's turned their back, he needs to make it seem like he's coming home sooner than 2028.
Inside prison, the reported strategy appears simple. Stay compliant, complete programs, avoid infractions, and accumulate credits methodically. For someone whose career was built on calculated moves, this phase is reportedly no different. Structured, focused, deliberate. But the outside world presents far less structure. Civil lawsuits remain unresolved. Financial strain from legal defense and settlements has reportedly reshaped what was once considered untouchable wealth. Brand relationships have shifted. Public perception is fractured. In today's media environment, reputations rarely reset overnight. And then there's the cultural factor. The music industry moves at lightning speed. Audiences evolve. New stars rise. The question isn't just whether he can return, it's whether the audience is willing to receive that return. There are several possible paths forward. Low-profile reintegration, quiet compliance, minimal publicity, gradual rebuilding behind the scenes. Narrative reclamation, interviews, or projects aimed at reshaping public perception. Strategic pivot, stepping away from entertainment entirely and focusing on private ventures. Each route carries risk. Each carries scrutiny. Supporters argue the First Step Act exists specifically to encourage rehabilitation and reintegration, that participation and discipline should lead to earned benefits regardless of fame. Critics question whether high-profile defendants benefit from visibility and resources that others lack. The broader debate touches on celebrity, justice reform, and equal application of federal law. What remains certain is this: paperwork still lists 2008. Any meaningful change requires official confirmation. Reports of earned credits reflect process, not guarantee. The bigger storyline may not be about how soon he leaves, but about what he does once outside. Because early release, if it happens, won't erase civil litigation. It won't automatically restore partnerships. It won't undo public.
Federal inmates can earn up to 15% off their time. You have to do 85% of your time by federal law, no matter what. Except there's a few little instances. Not no fucking First Step program. They don't have a program where you get out damn near 3 years fucking early. The Diddy's are dumber than they look, y'all.
What began as a straightforward federal sentence has now turned into a broader discussion about rehabilitation, celebrity accountability, and what redemption actually looks like in real time. The reported approval to earn credits under the First Step Act doesn't erase the conviction, and it doesn't guarantee a specific release date. But it does introduce a new variable into a case many believed was settled. The First Step Act was created to reduce recidivism and encourage measurable rehabilitation. Participation, compliance, and sustained good behavior are the foundation. If an inmate qualifies and consistently completes approved programming, credits can move them closer to supervised release or transitional housing. That process is administrative, not theatrical, structured, monitored, and subject to review at every stage. For Combs, the optics are complicated. On one hand, supporters argue the law is designed precisely for this: reward measurable effort and progress. If he qualifies and meets the criteria, the statute applies the same way it would for any federal inmate. On the other hand, critics argue that wealth and legal sophistication often allow high-profile defendants to navigate the system more strategically than the average person. Beyond policy debates lies a larger cultural question. If he transitions to work release or supervised placement earlier than expected, the focus will shift immediately from incarceration to reintegration. That phase can be just as complex. Work release typically involves strict conditions: monitored housing, approved employment, routine check-ins, and limited freedoms. It's not a return to private jets and red carpets. It's structured accountability with gradual exposure to the outside world. And that outside world is no longer the same one he left. Civil litigation remains active. Public opinion remains divided. Business partnerships that once seemed permanent may not automatically revive. The entertainment landscape moves fast. Reputations can take years to rebuild, if they recover at all. There's also the human factor. Extended incarceration often forces reflection, recalibration, and identity shifts. For someone whose brand centered on dominance and influence, adapting to supervised structure, even temporarily, could reshape how he approaches any comeback. Several scenarios remain possible. A controlled, quiet reentry focused on compliance and legal closure. Each path carries consequence. Importantly, as of now, official records still reflect the original projected release timeline. Any earlier movement would require confirmation from federal authorities. Reports of credit accumulation indicate process, not final outcome. What makes this moment compelling isn't just the legal mechanism, it's the contrast. A mogul who once controlled rooms now navigating institutional rules. A brand built on can't stop, won't stop, now measured in earned days and compliance metrics. Whether this becomes a redemption arc or another chapter of controversy will depend less on policy and more on decisions made moving forward. Because early release, if granted, doesn't close a story. It simply changes the setting. LF.